Thursday, October 7th, 2021. Calling the meeting to order. Could I have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Patterson,
Present.
Mrs. Pender,
Here.
Mrs. Walker,
Present.
Mr. Brown, Mr. Browning.
Here.
You have a quorum, all present.
Thank you, ma'am. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes. Ms. Davis, minutes are not ready? Okay, all right. So next time we'll have a few minutes to approve. Old business, we've got this report card, and tonight we want to continue with the report card assessment. Now, our goal here is to monitor and document the district's compliance and provide recommendations of the progress, including whether unitary status is being achieved in whole or part. The committee can recommend goals and benchmarks for progress, so we're not here to determine if people are working hard, which we know that they are. But what we are here to determine is that based on the data received, if measurable results are present, and via that, if unitary status is reached or if processes are in place towards compliance. Remember, the court order started in 1967, committee, revised in 94, and morphed into this agreement. Many years. So for some who think this would be quick and automatic, we can't take this lightly. Generations have been affected, and there's much work to do. So on the last meeting, September 30th, we discussed these items on the agenda and voted. And this meeting is the step to provide input and reasons behind the vote based on the data that you have received. We also want to determine if your vote remains the same after having some time to look at data over the past week, and suggested, I sent an email asking that you go ahead and be ready also again to provide your suggestions. And you also had a link to multiple documents from Dr. Shafty and Mr. Seymour's office. So I'll read through some of my reasoning and suggestions as I introduce the item. I'll read through some of the reasonings and suggestions found in the data and recommendations, and then we'll go round robin. And at the end of each section, address the vote status. And again, for this meeting discussion tonight, discussion will be by the committee. So we'll start at section 2, mentoring of new teachers and instructional staff. And let me go ahead and provide you a copy of my notes so you can read along with me. I think I have enough for everybody, if you'd like them. Okay. Thank you. And I'll go this way. Thank you. Okay, so I'm on the first page, down in the blue, and I say, I didn't see any nuances that specifically address the circumstances that African-American teacher mentoring was effective to them in specifics. No climate survey. There was a survey that showed, did you have a mentor? Did the mentor do this? Did the mentor do that? What I would have liked to see is something like, how were you welcomed at your school? Welcomed in the district? Did you feel like you were being heard? Opportunities to be heard? Have you seen promotions or fair treatment? Was it fair and transparent? Easy to apply to the school district of Indian River County? How many times or how many jobs did you apply for? Something to that effect, so that we can understand the experience of those teachers as they applied to the school district of Indian River County. We were told that they weren't going to use retired African-American educators, and I didn't see any valid reason for not using those. I'll mention for a third time, I used, got the two sisters' name, Miss Mary McKinney and Miss Gloria. And I think also even I used Mr. Godfrey Gibson a lot. They were retired at the time. So just to keep it in-house. Sometimes people are afraid, but they will say what they want or feel to people who they feel comfortable with. Somebody maybe from the community or a retired teacher who can help them sometimes in a different way. The survey that I mentioned earlier I don't think, it was kind of closed, but didn't show enough open and consistent opportunities for feedback, had closed-ended questions. And then we had a few other documents. When we're saying we got the documents like the We Promise flyer, beautiful, but it's not data. It's data showing that there's introduction in what the district does and all of that, but those were my notes. Now, recommendations: provide a plan that specifically addresses mentoring African American teachers and instructional staff. Plan should address the nuances and obstacles that African American teachers face and remedies strategies to address those nuances, obstacles. That climate survey that I meant could help give feedback regarding the school environment and the overall environment, how somebody's feeling in there. I remember when I was HR director, I sent took some teachers, African American, on an interview, and they could point out the schools. And they said, at this school, I didn't feel comfortable. And I know they didn't want me at this school, and they told me that feedback before. We need to know from a climate survey that schools are welcoming to everybody. I mean, you can still have a smile even if you know the person, if somebody doesn't have the top 10 resume that you want, but treat people good. And it may be, but we need to have that evidence that shows that we're asking those questions. Present an evidence-based program that provides cultural competency training for mentors to include social emotional support for African American mentees and feedback channels for those mentees, along with the completion by the mentors. So how do, a uniform process evidenced by documentation that criteria for mentors is widely publicized by principals and recommend teachers, especially African American teachers, certified. I didn't see much from the principals that said we were going to, what we're going to get. And then lastly, an 85% retention rate maintained for 3 consecutive years for new teachers, 1 through 3, first year through 3rd year. This would be evident of a change in the environment and the culture of the school and the district. Because as we know, and when I was in the district, I know people could come in, you hired 10, and by the end of the year, 5 are gone, either non-renewed or for whatever reason, and there was no explanation as to why. And you don't have to give a reason for non-renewal, but you should have some kind of steps that you have provided a teacher who is struggling. And that's my portion on that first section. So I said round robin, Ms. Patterson.
I would be first, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I agree with you in these specific areas regarding those recommendations. I do feel that we can be more specific in the type of proof that we're requesting. I mean, just saying proof, that can mean one thing to the district and something else to us. So if that's what we're going to request, I think we should be very specific in what that proof should look like. If it's quantitative, we need to put some numbers to that. If it's subjective, be very specific, because again, that's up to each person's perspective. So that's my only comments on that. The second thing, number 5, on your recommendations, 85% retention rate.
Mm-hmm.
Is that lower than the current retention rate? I think it's in the 90s. So we don't want to go backwards.
Well, yeah.
We want to at
You're
least
right.
maintain what we have or increase that. So definitely changing that number to at least match what is current or exceed that.
Yes, and now that I think we spoke about this before, retention rate is about 10%, well, turnover rate is about 10% generally for most companies.
Mm-hmm.
So 90% would be excellent, and so we would need to see, because we have the charts that say retention rate 90%, whatever percentage, and that's all we get. So I agree with you that there, and I'd like to be able to quantify that. Here's who we hired in this year, and here's who left. Then we can see that it's 90%.
That it's sustained.
That it's sustained, yes.
Okay.
At least 3 years
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And so you understand what I'm saying? What we've gotten is charts that say it was 90%, 80%, whatever it was, but there's no proof. It's just a percentage. But if you give me that list that, you know, you had Ms. Brown, Ms. Walker, Mr. Jones, and the list, and they are still here at the end of the year, then I can verify that. Because I can give you any number. I can say I'm 95% right on my job, but how is that measurable, quantifiable? So,
Also,
yes.
in regards to school by school, we spoke about Power BI. That it's an amazing tool, and I would love to be able to sit down with each of you and show you. I'm sure you use it all the time. It's excellent to aggregate data. Everything you can think of, it's at the click of a button. But when we're talking about schools and retention, we have this ratio where we want to see a
You're right.
certain representation of the student population. So to be able to track that, again, I'm trying to think of everything that we were kind of going back and forth about, so that, again, it could be specific. So in the work going forward, we can measure these things and really be able to monitor them. So again, adding something to that effect to making certain that we are tracking the ratio to the student, teacher ratio to student population.
Track ratio, track student and teacher ratio. And might need to be a little bit more specific on that one, but I'm going to change my 85% to 90%.
That makes me feel better.
Okay.
Chairman, also, along with the previous recommendations, for a school, rather than just defining by percentages, we need a box number. To show that the district is moving that way, let someone say,
Hold on one second. You can't hear somebody? Ooh, Mr. Brown?
are you all right now? Testing. Okay, thank you. The recommendations were at least 5 teachers, per school. So if we're gonna step outside of the box, let's get away from just saying percentages.
Okay.
Let's move to an area where it is any African-American child can walk a campus and feel welcome because there's people on that campus that look like him. So if we go into percentages, that's not 50 years ago, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But now we're in 2021, moving into the 22nd century. Let's show the world that if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. Let's go and follow the recommendations previously of 5 teachers per school.
Okay, so in
That might not match the student population.
But that's why we're getting away from the student population. We're evolving. What I'm saying is, let's evolve. Let's not focus, because we had the situations where previously you have a principal say, I got my 1, based on percentages. I got my 1.
So in instances like Gifford Middle, where it's a high population of African Americans, if I give it a percentage based on ratio, and I can have 10 teachers, black teachers, based on the student population, should I cut it off at 5?
No, we're saying a minimum.
No, a minimum.
A minimum. It's a minimum. It's not a statutory number.
So the minimum so the verbiage should be a minimum of 5.
Percentages, yeah, and percentages plus endeavor to do at least 5 teachers a school. Because as you stated, if we go to a racially definable school or a color definable school such as Dodgertown, and you got 30%, you see what you're saying is real. The percentage may outmatch the 5 teachers. So if we have both of them, we can't lose.
So there's going to be a margin where it should be a safe or comfortable or acceptable number. I'm trying to use the correct verbiage to make certain that I'm understanding.
Yeah, I just want to reflect. I remember at Beachland Elementary, we had Miss Florida Ingram, who was the first district's state teacher of the year. She was the only black teacher there during my time of 10 years. So you mean to tell me in 10 years they couldn't find another African-American teacher? And then we have a teacher, I've been looking at a lot of data lately, but I think there's one African-American teacher who's been there unless Fellsmere has another, and I hate to call the
She's
school
the
name.
only one.
She's the only one?
I know her.
She's been there 18 years. So that is I gave you the last time the 5-year look, but in 18 years? Okay, so I'm
And
sorry, go ahead.
I want to speak to that, and I don't negate that. But I was a potential hire for Fellsmere. I know that he is trying to recruit, but the logistics didn't work out for me.
Yeah.
So I can't say that there aren't any efforts. There may be other circumstances.
Right.
Like I said, and again, speaking from, personal experience, he was quite disappointed that I didn't come. But again, logistically, it didn't work for me. So
Yeah.
just, again, speaking for those people that may have been,
Yeah.
Fellsmere is far.
Yes,
It's fine.
and I hate,
Logistically, it is.
I hate to
it's
call
out
that
there.
name because I know him very well. I like him. We've talked a lot, and it's not about him.
Oh, no,
It's
absolutely
not about people. And
Absolutely
I'm saying that
Absolutely not.
for the world out there. It's not about people. It's about 50 years, and then you say some schools have not made a move in 5 to 10 to 18 years. That goes beyond principle. That's systemic. And I hate to say it like that, but it's true when it gets to 18 years. And it's the red pill, blue pill, red pill. It is what it is, and we have to face up to it and own it. Now, it's most people's choice. They probably would not like to drive that far, like you say, to Fellsmere. But a lot of people I know, to get a job, they'll go where they need to go. And so, sorry, Miss Walker, you have anything?
No, I was just gonna joke and say, well, she had options, right? You had options.
As I said, that's solely for me.
Right.
And again, it may be someone else's issue or situation as well. I can only speak for myself, but again, just offering that.
But it would be good to have that information, as well as, why didn't you accept the position if it was offered to you? Like, we could still track that information as well.
Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you I was going to say up here in the school board, it was over here, but this was the old school board. When I talked about, I used to track even cafeterias. That school is 90% Hispanic. They had they had 10 cafeteria workers, not one could speak Spanish. What do you do when a child says, no tengo hamburgues, I get headaches or stomach aches or I'm allergic, and you don't understand what he's saying? Oh, take it. And I told the board that standing up there at one time when I was the monitor for this and giving them the update. Those types of things, are important. And since we're limited in here, I can go on a little rant. When I first met with the superintendent, and we came up with qualified African Americans. If you got a degree, you're qualified. So and I asked Frank Mullins, the food service director at the time. I guess I shouldn't call his name, but I asked the food service director, how come we can't find any Hispanic women to work in that cafeteria? You mean to tell me they don't want to work there? So sometimes it's an effort on the part of the district to go forward. And I told you I've had some NyQuil today, so no more names, no more schools. I apologize, but it's real and I know it, and I don't make stuff up like this. Did you have anything, Ms. Walker?
Are you done?
Oh, I was just going to add,
Oh, sorry.
to go back to what Ms. Patterson said, the percentages with the minimum of 5 teachers would be my recommendation,
Yes.
so that we'll move into the 22nd century and not just be stuck, because we do have the Dodger Towns, we do have the VBEs, we do have these schools where the color population has excelled. So we have to be cognizant of the fact that maybe that percentage-wise, would be more than 5. So, but I want a viable presence of African-American teachers on every campus. The other thing was proof of African-American teachers being asked to be mentors and, stuff of that. You can tell us this, but let us see the data, and in a lot of instances, we were told stuff, and then you know, I'm getting a reading spell that we're not being afforded all of that information.
Sorry. I agree with you, yes.
And so those are some of the things, we not, you know, calling it out, you know, but we're not judging, but let's get this thing done. Let's get it done right. But that was my biggest thing, getting African-American teachers, the percentage of teachers, those are real important moving forward.
Yes, sir.
So my question, I guess, regarding the mentoring, do you want, how are we going to put that? Are we going to offer all African-American new teachers to be partnered with or mentored by an African-American? And if they opt out, how do we need to be able to see if it's a choice, right?
That's the key.
We need to be able to see if it's a choice, so that verbiage needs to be in there as well. And requesting that information so that the district knows how to, again, give that information. So upon request, if they say no, we need to know that, all right? And again, making it measurable, is it going to be a percentage? Maybe we don't have enough. I know I'm clinically trained. I don't know if enough Black, and we mentioned that too about being clinically trained as mentors. So
Yes.
again, do we have enough staffing to meet that goal?
That's what I was going to ask you when you said clinically trained. Have we made that, is that
Yes.
is that the requirement of the mentors?
As it stands now?
Yes, it is, and I think that that's the reason that the previous committee, I know that's the reason the previous committee recommended bringing on retired African-American
That's what I was
teachers.
referring
So
to.
even if they don't have the clinically trained, you know, district, but there is that offering for someone to still provide that support, maybe not in the clinical way, but someone who knows what teaching is like, but also understands what it's like to teach here.
And it you know, clinically trained gets kind of, you know, into the details, and I like that. But sometimes when you can have a friendly face who can say it different, you know, somebody who, and I think everybody here probably maybe knows Godfrey Gibson, somebody, you know, not that want to give him a job, but just Miss McKinney, or somebody who can say, honey, you put that up there wrong. Let me help you figure out your but you're
I'm
right.
just trying to figure out.
I agree with you,
what
yeah.
it's going to be,
We need to
how
make-
it's going to be stated, so
Yeah.
that it's clearly and plainly stated. So again, we know what to monitor.
My wording would be
I like that.
that we acquire a pool of mentors that specifically addresses the needs of African Americans, which is to include retired African American teachers who are willing to be mentors, so that you have a choice in your teachers have a choice in the process, and that matters, a choice, because as I said, all skin folk ain't kinfolk, so everybody might not want, or it may not matter to certain teachers, and it might be certain teachers' comfort zone. So we need to word it that the pool itself addresses these needs and have the components necessary for these teachers to receive that tutoring, that mentoring that they feel is comfortable to them.
Yes. Okay. You guys have given a lot, and I stopped writing. So,
Brenda's good over there. She writes fast.
No, but I
Is
think,
she-
I want to say,
okay. So Clin Ed, Ms.
She looked
Patterson
up.
said,
it is extremely
And we have.
important to match up the mentors with the black teachers with someone who at least is open to it. I know that our PD department is very intentional. They've even asked me to come in and do some training around cultural competence, and Ms. Patterson was a part of one of the trainings that I did. And in the groups, they had to read the article, and then they were going to give feedback, and she was really powerful in the article that she read, but someone in her group didn't even bother to read the article. And the articles were about recent issues that were blatant racism, for example, when the boys were followed around in Saks and their cars were searched, and there were all these things. There was one member of her group that did not even bother to read or engage in the activity at all. And so that said to me that there was no interest. And so I would hate to be someone who is black, who is, you know, partnered with that mentor, and then they don't maybe not have that interest level in me. So I think it's very important for us to make sure that, even if it isn't, we want to make sure that we have the retired teachers available and all of that. We also want to make sure that the people who are participating are willing to be and match with someone who is different.
Okay, yes. Yeah, so what I think I hear you guys saying is make it an option, but make sure that they have the ability to be clin ed trained. And also, in my thought is, you know, it could be did you hear it, like just somebody for support would be a mentor to come in. When you have mentors for little kids, all they have to do is be level 2 background screened. So you don't make sure they know how to, you know, they should know how to read, but you don't make sure they can read on a college level just to be a mentor. You know what I mean? So why would we make it so hard for retired educators to come in and do that?
It is really hard. Education today is not like it was 5 years ago, and let alone 20 years ago. The methodologies,
Yeah.
it is quite complicated. So I would feel cheated as a new teacher and not have someone that can support me in that regard.
Yeah.
In my,
Both.
so you see, both are equally as important. I would not send a new teacher out there and say, I'm just going to give you social and emotional support. I need to be able to give that teacher some strategies and, you know, some support in his or her instruction
Practice.
and her practice, his or her practice. That is vital to being a successful teacher.
So I think we're saying that I agree. I think that the nuance of being a new black teacher, though, is that you not only do you need that instructional, that pedagogical support, right? But you also need that emotional, you need that support of somebody, again, because this is a unique county. This is a very unique experience, so you need to have someone who is able to say, this is how you know, just to provide that support. Here's where you go get your hair done. Here, you know what I mean? Like, there are all kind of different things that are unique about living in this county, and so I think that absolutely you need that support to improve your craft, to classroom management. All of that is essential, but what makes it unique to be black in this area is that you need that additional layer of support.
So if we can offer both.
As an option, yes.
That's what we're saying, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly, right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if we can effectively do that, yeah, absolutely. That's
We
mentoring the
don't-
whole teacher, you know?
Right,
That
right,
would
right.
be very ideal.
My question now, do people major in education? See,
De-
we
de-
majored in education,
decreasingly.
either elementary or high school, secondary.
Yeah.
And we knew. And I'm wondering, now, do people even major in education?
I didn't. Elementary was my second, it's my second major. It's not my primary.
It wasn't your primary,
So,
okay.
again, but going through the clin ed training, going through those new teacher programs, you're quite familiar. I was able to build my craft. If I didn't have those supports, I wouldn't be as
And-
effective as I am today as an
And
educator.
I'm one of these people, I say you either have it or you don't with teaching. Or either you can work your way there.
You can. I work with
You
teachers
know.
all the time. I
Yeah.
have 2 teachers right now in a coaching cycle. They want to teach. Not many people want to teach. And if you can have people that are strong in their craft and their practices to coach them up, I'd rather want somebody who was there and wanted to be around babies and teach them how to teach, as opposed to having someone that majored in education who was good at it and can pass the test and become certified, but their heart wasn't there.
Oh, no, I'm
You know,
talking way
so
up there. This
it
is who
kind of,
you
you know,
are.
it's on both sides, but I get what you're saying, absolutely. Majoring in education,
It was a passion.
It
I
wa-
mean,
right.
It still is, because I'm still
absolutely.
out there.
You're still doing it, you're still in
Something.
it, yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so that's the round robin, and I think you remember what the vote was on the last time. It was, we hadn't reached compliance yet, so does anybody feel different that we should revote that?
It was what?
It was it was not compliance last time,
Right.
so I don't
stand
see a
firm
reason
in
to
my
go.
vote.
I'm same boat, non-compliant.
All right, okay. Now we move on to Section 3, Recruitment of African American Teachers. You have my notes, it'll be on page 5. I've looked at some of this multiple times. Of course, you know, you're never 100% accurate and can see everything, but some of this I have looked at and, a few times. One of them that I looked at was the proof of listing the NAACP as partner on the website that was suggested for proof. That website does not exist. That troubles me a little bit. I typed in the URL, and it's not there.
I believe that yeah, on the district's website,
Yes?
Mhm.
Okay.
I believe that I can't tell you up to October 7th
Okay.
at, 6:30, but I know that I have seen it listed on the district website.
All right. I searched and searched, and let's see, when you print off something on a page, it comes off with the date on a web page, right? Okay. So if there's somebody who could print that off for us with today's date in that list, that would tell me that we're getting accurate information, that the NAACP is listed on that page as a partner, as it was in this recruitment information on tonight. I think it said something _ students, families, something like that. And I can pull it up a little bit, and let's see. But if somebody can pull me that webpage, that'll work. Something that bothered me before, remember I was struggling with this one, and I liked the recruitment of the numbers, the hard work that was put in to get the teachers, but then there was things that held me back, and I even said, give me 10 seconds, because I really got to think this through, and it was a headache for me. A couple of times when I got the new teacher list, they were redacted. A huge stack of redacted information. I had to ask that I have it unredacted, and that to me is a delay in time. And I think it was over the course of, if not 2 months, 3, before I received the unredacted list of names by school. And the first time I got it, Ms. Krista Foley handed it to me back there. And the other times were on the redacted ones were on there. And so that was a sore spot, and I think a hindrance in us moving forward, because if we can take care of that in one meeting and then move forward, then we can take care of it. This is IndianRiverSchools.org, where? Okay, that's not the page we were given. Okay, so we were given something different. And can I hand this around? Because you all saw the page that we were given. So it didn't
I
look
might
like
like
that.
your phone and might keep it. Stop, Brenda. No,
And then to show you, I'll pull that.
I think I have a copy of it.
If you have a copy of it.
It's in one of these 3 documents, and it has the one they showed, it has the 3 emblems on
It
it.
had 3 side by side.
Yeah.
I forgot what the other 2 said. But that is not the page that we
That
were
was-
given. So that's why. So if it's on there somewhere, kudos, fine, thank you. But that wasn't the page that we were given as an artifact,
Yeah,
where it says listed NAACP as a community partner. Items requested delayed. 4/22/2021, I requested a list of African-American teachers who applied for positions, and what I received was the number of teachers who applied by race, and it was difficult to read. On 5/03, I requested the same data list. So that's, 11 days later, next month, 4/22 to 5/03, the same data list. I didn't get it. Email, 5/06, I received the email from the superintendent, said the HR would reach out to AppleTrack to determine if there was a report to provide the information. That's May 6th. On 6/11, the superintendent sent the data list of applicants. Now, the list was for the last 3 years. The one that I got at that point had only 42 African-American applicants, some of who applied for 9, 10, 11, and 12 positions. It did not include people who had applied at that time in 20 or 21. What I'm trying to convey to you is, from April to June, to get a list of people who applied, that delays the information sometime, and it should be easy because it's in an applicant tracking system. So how, at that point, could we tell? We couldn't take care of it in May because we didn't receive the list. So in June, we get it, but how do we know that 200 applicants had applied or not? Maybe they only got 60, maybe they got 200. I don't know. How do you make a determination that there was a proper proportionate ratio of candidates or qualified candidates or whatever? Ms. Davis, could you hit the share and send that to I can write my cell phone, or email it to me. Thank you, that page. Thank you very much. So now I provided each of you, and I'm going to give Ms. Davis a copy of, in this red folder, this is one of the data items we received. I lost my glasses. I couldn't see that with my glasses. So this is when, I think around the time that Miss Bristol, Dr. Bristol was there, and we had to ask for it again. No matter how long or short I make my arms, I cannot see this data. So when you give me data I can't do anything with, now we've got to wait and delay to the next time. I think the next one you have looks like this. It has a blue circle on it. Please provide the arrests by school this past year by race. Does anybody recall receiving anything related to school arrests? If you do, let me know. And then you see the list of other things I had down there. Then there was a third one that says 18-19 school year. I gave somebody else mine, I don't have it. But you see that, yes. And that is the document that took 2 months to get. So if you're telling me we're recruiting teachers, how does it take so long? That's a part of we're on this deadline. And I think we're getting better at looking at the data. So but we could have taken care of that recruitment in almost limited time when we get data on time and it's easy to see, and then we talked about having it in color because the black and white made it so hard. So that was my point there. Recruitment recommendation notes. Provide list of certified teachers who were hired and their certification areas. So in hindsight, and I think we get better with the data, with looking at the data and what it is that we need to look for. If we have the list of 36 teachers, where are they certified in? You know, because we don't want to just put people in the classroom. I've seen it done before. I'm not saying the district has done that, but this is what has been done in the past. Yes, we hired 10, 7 didn't make it because they couldn't pass the certification or they couldn't do this or that or the other. And recruitment, I think, and mentoring, or recruitment, that is a part of the culture. When offers of employment are included, some of them didn't have the signatures on them, and I think it was probably because maybe they hadn't, I guess the offer had just been made and not fully accepted by then. But some of them had no signatures, so we have to get better with how we ask for and receive data with that. Include copies of questions used in interviews or interview pack to include the committee doing the interview. So if you tell me you had interviews, how do I know? How do we gauge that? Who applied and who was chosen without at least some samples from some school? And I don't think we received a sample of any school of an interview Who
Did
was
we
the-
specifically request that documentation? I guess that's I'm just,
Yeah,
I can't remember.
It was on the, this is not the first time the district has gone through this process. So it is, these are things we will be looking for in the future. Data that shows uniform hiring across the district and hirings as equitable. Are the interviews sort of like patterned the same? Is it kind of like the same questions for across the 3 middle schools? We'll say, for instance, across the elementary schools. I know things vary because especially in high school you have so many different subjects, but you know, you just want to show an example. Here are the questions that was asked. Of course, it was asked to every candidate. Here were the people who are on the interview committee.
So I know that because I am on one of those committees, there is a bank that you can retrieve culturally responsive questions, balanced questions, but there's a bank that interview committees can choose those questions from. So I guess it would be our responsibility to ask, maybe to request to see the questions in the bank, if that's what you're wanting to know, like what types of questions are being asked?
Yes.
Is that what you're wanting?
Yes. I know Beth and I talked about the real estate, and she had some people lined up. I think I'd like to see how effective is that, you know, the list of those help with housing, real estate efforts. Are we, is that, hopefully it'll be better in a few months because the market will go down slightly, I hope. But, you know, I know it's kind of hard out there, and just some proof on that end. You know, it's the other side of the coin, if you know what I mean. Here we have the recruiters, and here we have the recruiter got these 3 people. Because I know when I was doing it, I could tell you who I put a girl at, used Lozada Real Estate, and had a girl at Citrus Elementary who helped her get a place out there with that real estate company. And I know she has a list of more, but just a sample. And these are just recommendations. Rate of promotions of African-American teachers equivalent to their majority counterparts. And that would equate to maybe equality and opportunity. You know, how many people were promoted to, if it's considered a promotion, reading coach or math coach, and what do the math and reading coaches look like? I mean, there's a whole lot. We've only barely scratched the surface, but some of that data would help us feel a little more confident about the way,
Mr.
the
Chair.
direction we're heading. Yes,
I had
sir.
a question. You know, we were talking about the interview process. If we're going to determine across the board that it's uniformity, we don't have to be specific. We just need a matrix or something that the district presented that says, these are the questions that, if it was Mrs. Walker, these were the questions that was asked of her. If it was Mrs. Pender, if whomever it was, we don't have to necessarily specify, but they should have provided us with a matrix of questions that, you know, across the board, if we're going to do the process fair. I think that's something that's very important, because if I'm sitting in the room, my biases can take over in the interview process. You know, if I like Ms. Walker and I want her to have the job, did I ask all those questions that I would have asked Ms. Pender? And there's no data to prove that it was uniformity across the board, that you were asking all teachers the same question, you know?
Yes.
It's just something that I think I wrote it down several times to myself, that human nature steps in and your biases step in.
Yes.
But if there's a matrix that says you must ask all applicants, and then,
And I would assume, I think they have that.
And again,
Now, but, I'm sorry, go ahead.
and again, serving on those recruitment teams and being a part of the interview process, that is a requirement. Again, but you need to see that, so that would be
Yes.
something that you need to request specifically. We can't say because we haven't seen it, it's not happening. So if we request it, it can definitely be provided. But I know there's a panel, so it's not just a principal and one other applicant. There is a panel. There are questions that are asked, the same questions that are asked of all applicants. Again, those questions are retrieved from a bank. They're agreed upon by the panel. I can only go, again, based on my experience. I don't know if that is for all schools, but again, in order for us to progress monitor that, that specific information has to be requested going forward, I guess.
Yeah, and personally, it wasn't in the school district, it was, so subsequently later, I have one of my people sit in on the interviews, but I sat in on the interview, and the director was asking, they were just making up questions off the top of their head. And when that interviewee left out, I said, what are you doing? You're supposed to be asking the same questions to every candidate. And the person says, oh, the director, I didn't know you, we didn't have any training, but you were here before I came here, and you make $120,000 a year. If you haven't been, so sometimes we assume that people know, and it has to be told, that this is, legally it keeps us out of trouble, and this is what needs to be done for everybody to be fair. And I do have to say that it has to be a balance of a little bit of common sense in the fact that if I don't have any, sometimes people hire according to what their peers and what they're comfortable looking at. So for you people right here, you might be comfortable with every, I'm just saying, every African-American person that comes in. And me as the principal might have to say, well, yeah, but this one is just as qualified, and we need to diversify our staff. And the same qualifications, so I need to make that. And sometimes that might rub your hiring staff the wrong way. Because they're used to doing the choosing.
Yeah.
And when we're at this level of a sense of urgency, sometimes it might have to be taken over in a different way.
And I remember they're not a fit. I've heard that recent, they're not a fit, or we're looking for a fit. So I think that it is the responsibility of the district, not us, to show us that they are following a certain protocol when they're interviewing these teachers. Not, if we want the data on how are you doing your interview process, this should be a part of the package that you give us. We don't have to do all your work for the district. We want you, okay, here's A, B, C, D, E, and F that we're doing in this process. If you want to know our protocol for interviews, here's the matrix for the questions. We don't have to specify anything. The district, in order to achieve unitary status, must provide this documentation that we did all that we was able to do in order to have a fair and open process, not that we as an equity committee has to bear the burden of proving that you did your job.
I hear what you're saying. It's just unless we clearly define expectations in certain things, if things aren't clearly defined, then how can we meet that? You get what I'm saying? So I guess what I'm saying is that if we want to see something, if I want to see something, I'm going to request it.
Yes.
And it is up to the district to get things together so that we can reach unitary status. Absolutely, it is the work of the district, right? And we're here to monitor that work. But again, and we don't know what we want to request sometimes until we have a discussion.
Correct.
And so it's not a matter of someone being right or wrong or this, that, and the other. Again, it's discussions like this that prompt us to ask for certain things specifically so that we can see and monitor whatever it is that we are seeking to monitor.
And I think that's a part of the process. I think you're right. We get better at what we're looking for, and then to add on to that, I told you this portion really bothered me. So because it's had some good and it had some bad. As far as when I asked for 2 months to get a list of teachers, or a list of applicants. I want to know, okay, if you had 100 apply at this time, how many of those were chosen? I also asked something that affects hiring, and this is the first time that I'll mention this here, but I did ask for it. I had verifiable information that people were being screened out due to an arrest. So Kevin Browning could have had an arrest for a domestic situation 15 years ago. And then the district screens me out due to an arrest. Mind you, an arrest is not a conviction. And you can't use arrests, and the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, has filed lawsuits based on that. Why? Because who is arrested more, and then if you use that, it predominantly affects them more. And when I asked about it, I was told that I'd get it would be checked with HR and get back with me. Haven't heard about that anymore. So there are some things that I do ask for, and I haven't gotten. That's one of them, because if you have so many people who have arrests who are just, and one of those people who had an arrest ended up being hired because she had to go and get the final disposition from the court that said that, you know, this happened back then and it was thrown out or whatever. But based on putting an arrest in there, you disqualify people from even applying. So I would like for some kind of, in the future, some kind of response to that. I did get calls from African American teachers at a certain school, and I talked to, and I spoke about it before. They had concerns, and I told the district, and someone was sent out. But as far as, you know, was there a conversation? Was there, hey, Houston, we got a problem. You need to deal with this. Was there a mindset change? Is it business as usual? So then it puts me into a position where I feel like I have to scream about it or put everything in writing and then demand and ask for it 3 or 4 times. And those are very important, because that portion, when you're talking about arrests, that's illegal. And if you get enough people to come and say that this has happened to them, your company's liable. It's a class action, or it could be. I mean, and so, you know, when one person, and it could be black, white, indifferent, one person who that's done to is enough that their rights are violated. And if I asked a question about it, and I said, I will not, if I hear something, I'm bringing it first before I put it out there in the public. So that was my frustration when I'm looking at some of this data. Am I still on me? I'm so sorry. Round robin. We were talking back and forth, and I thought everybody had gone. Now I realize they haven't. I told y'all I drank some NyQuil or DayQuil, something. Did you have anything, before Ms. Patterson, you had a comment?
Yeah, my thing is, I was privy to have served on this board previously. Some of this, and I know Ms. Patterson wasn't there, but I was, some of this information request is repetitive. We've asked for it over and over and over. And somewhere in this process, the light should go on that we're not doing what we're being asked. In the 3 years that the same thing about teachers is being asked for, here we are in the 12th hour trying to define it again, when previously it was a no-brainer. This is what we want. And now, so we're at this point, no, we're not going to go back. You need to understand, district, you are the defendant. You have a burden to show us, this committee, if you want unitary status, that all I's are dotted and all T's are crossed. It's not incumbent upon us to say, well, you might have had a bad day today and you didn't understand us. You got all these people making in excess of $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 a year, that somebody in that group should say they asked for a portfolio or a profile on how teachers are interviewed. Let's give them the matrix that shows definitively, and we can stand and hold our chests out that we can show them data-driven information, that each teacher was asked the same questions, which afforded them the same opportunity. So I don't think we in year 3 should be trying to specify what we mean when we want to know what is the hiring process, what are the questions, how are they asked, all of these things. So I think somewhere in this scenario, somebody should have figured out what this committee wants and given us what we're wanting.
Okay, those were mine. Did anybody, round robin, anybody else have anything?
So, just on the interview questions, I wanted to add the culturally competent interview strategies, and also eliminate bias. And then, so, just so we're clear, because I did say that I would have these typed up and ready for the team. Are we all going with Mr. Browning's, Chairman Browning's recommendations, and then we're just modifying them? Are we all agreeing to the recommendations that Chairman Browning made?
All right,
Feel free to modify.
yeah, I think mine work in close proximity to yours.
Okay.
If it's something you think
So on this one, on page 5, the only thing that I changed for your recommendations, Chairman, is from 85% to 90%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes, ma'am. And I think like Mr. Brown said, strive for 5 per school. And it's hard to do in 1 year when you have a smaller school, but when some places, I gave you the report, the last 5 years, we lose approximately 10%, which is about 100 teachers per year. So in the past 10 years, we've hired 1,000 teachers. And I know sometimes you can't make people stay. They want to go play in Orlando at Disney World and all this other type of stuff. But we should see, a better effort. In the past, it's been a good effort this year as far as the recruitment. Ms. Pender, did you have anything?
I'm good with what's
Okay. So,
concerned.
So may I just tell you how I worded it? Strive for 5 African-American teachers per school, even when this number exceeds the percentage of students enrolled. Does that make
yes,
sense?
yes, I just told you that. Yeah, yes, I like that. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We see progress, and we said at the beginning, we're not judging if people are working hard, but we see they are, and it's kind of, I have to divorce myself from the situation because these are people I like and used to work with, and people that a few of them that I come in, I care a whole lot about. But I know generations have been affected, and I feel like we can do so much better. So that was all? Okay, so now here is, I asked the last question, is everyone, on the first time, was everyone comfortable with their vote? That didn't change. Same question for this one. Is everyone comfortable with their vote? This one was, I think it was in favor of,
Compliance.
it was in favor of compliance. And I'm going to tell you, I have a headache because after re-looking at this data and having to ask for things a number of times, I want to make a motion to bring that vote back up. But I can't make it, so if somebody else would like to entertain it.
I make a motion that we revisit the compliance on representation of African-American teachers and instructional staff.
I second that motion.
So all in favor of compliance, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, aye.
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 So it's 3-2. Are you? I don't know if you're, okay, so this one's 3-2. And it's none. And that bugs me. You have no idea what kind of headache I have because I think there were so many, there were just delays of time that we could have gone when we went from getting the board to recommend, to look at the 2019 recommendations. I think that was 2 or 3 meetings. And it took way too long, even from last year. So I feel like sometimes there are delays that either we don't recognize the importance of. I can't understand it. Section 5. And I'll reiterate again, that still, that recruitment area worked hard. But there are the other pieces that just put us at a disadvantage, in my opinion. I'm 1 of 5, so. Oh. So we're on section 6, no, section 4, sorry, representation of African American teachers and instructional staff. But let me say, when teachers move from, when they call you and tell you, I don't feel comfortable here, and they move from one school to another, that's a staffing issue. That is and I'm hoping that, I don't know how many calls the equity office has gotten so far, but I'm hoping that, like I said before, that those calls, we won't get them. Call us if you want. Definitely call me, contact me, people who know how to. But I would prefer, if somebody's having an issue, to call Mr. Seymour and Dr. Shafty so that it can be handled, and they feel comfortable that there's somebody that they can go to in the office. And that may be happening, but we'll know when it gets better, much better. Number 4, representation. Difficulty in getting the requested information at times, or sometimes not at all, and that was some information. No exit interviews. Representation at the schools. We discussed on why people left. No discussion on, it said, I saw a list that said 12 left, might have been 13. 2 resigned, and no, 2 were non-renewed, and the rest resigned. I know there are exit interviews that have to be done. We didn't even get a copy of an exit interview. And sometimes people are leaving out of state, and they'll be truthful, and they'll say, I didn't feel comfortable at the school, or my husband took a job in another state, whatever. We talked earlier about receiving some exit interviews. I know we mentioned it. Everybody remember that? Does anybody remember that? And we didn't see any. Remedial or intervention measures, didn't see any. I'd like to see some of those, like, here's what happens when we move this, when this teacher's about to be leaving, or they struggle, or something to that effect. And it doesn't have to be as far as somebody getting personal in somebody's personal information, but at least as we had teacher X, here's what we did to show that we remediated them. Paired them up with this person, paired them with the reading coach, had the documented that the math coach went in 7 times this year, something. And lastly, data presenting regarding available positions and hiring as far as interviews of teachers, instructional staff. So that affects this area too. At the bottom, recommendations, proof of the African American turnover at each school, along with the reason for the turnover, provide some exit interview information. Specific plans / follow-up after problems are exposed. Channel for process with evidence of the outcome.
Can you clarify that a little bit more
Which one?
for that specific plan?
That specific plan, follow-up after problems are exposed?
So, like, what kind of problems do you mean? If teachers are struggling, saying that they should have a plan?
If something's going on at a school, and I can use that one I've been saying the whole time, what does somebody do? Hopefully they go to the Office of Equity and Access, and they say, I feel like I'm not getting being mistreated here or overlooked or something like that. Is that conveyed to the teachers? Is it? Yeah, I believe it's in the handbook that you would go to HR if you had a problem. But is the Office of Equity and Access, can that be added in the handbook as far as a way to another avenue? Oh, and I'm sorry, I should have written it down. It talked about HR and recruitment. I think I saw an email from HR in regards to the recruitment, but it said HR will make relations. So anyway, you know, do you have more than one avenue? And then no evidence of the turnover of African-American teachers by school. You know, pick on who, let's see. Oslo Middle they hired 7 or 3 African-American teachers this year, and they lost 2. What was the loss per school? Because then if we see that per school there are problems, what's the issue with the school? Not saying that there would be an issue with the school, but if a school's losing 5 in 1 year, there's an issue. If you got a school calling you saying there's a problem, there's an issue. So, you know, turnover by school. And then the same thing, we'll change that to 90% retention or whatever. So that's the school representation by school. And then I mentioned to you earlier, there are some schools with 1, I think the rest of, no, 1 school I believe with 1, if I'm correct. And I think Pelican Island, I think they have 4 African-American teachers now, so they've done some diligence, and as well as Beachland, I think, is up to 2 or 3. I think Osceola has picked up some. So in those schools, there are some schools that need to be worked on. So there's still some work to do. And along with that hiring, on the flip side comes, at that last bullet, retention. So, I'm sorry, did you have a question on mine?
Yes, I just wanted to point out that when we say 5 at each school, do we want to consider elementary versus secondary? Those schools are larger. And so 5 black teachers on a campus with 3,000
3,
students.
at least 3?
No, it was a minimum.
Oh, you're talking about middle school?
Number was a minimum.
Middle
of
school is
5.
huge. That's 1,000. There should be no excuse for a middle school.
Yeah, I
That's
think
why I was
Storm
saying-
Grove,
Percentage.
Percentages
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
representation.
actually, the biggest middle school has the lowest number, I believe.
we said
Lowest
minimum,
percentage.
we said percentages, but we also had it with a minimum of 5 teachers. It
Right,
should-
I was just wondering if we wanted to look at secondary, it doesn't, we don't have to. I
Oh, I
was just
see what
making
you're
that point.
saying.
Elementary schools are smaller, so
Smaller.
5 at an elementary school would look a lot different
Then
than
5.
5 at a larger campus.
And I'm sorry, I had a flashback of when Dr. Jones had Sebastian High School. She had a lot of minorities and males, more black men than any other school, I believe, in the district. And you had an A school. You made the A school, I think, and Doc, I don't mean to, not going to make you talk because it's a workshop here to talk. A school. And they could teach. So throw out the myth and the misconception that, you know, whatever people might think. And when we made progress, and the district was an A district, and that first year, that's when we made a lot of progress. I was in HR. Tom Marr was the superintendent. And it was a lot of black male teachers at that school, and females too. So we were making progress in the district. So it can be done. Sorry, go ahead, Ms. Walker, that
No,
was
I
your
was
question
just-
to me? Oh, yeah, middle school should be well above that. Ms. Patterson,
I mean, I don't
you're on
want to
the
do
round
an
robin.
arbitrary number. I'm just wondering if that was something that we wanted to consider. If not, I have it as it is, but
And they reflect the aggregate population, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. But,
So Ms. Patterson she's passing to you, Mr. Brown, if you have anything. And change some of my stuff if
no,
I'm wrong.
I think we, 95, I agree with that, the 90%. The, culturally, you already got provide culturally competent training for district staff.
While you're looking, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was in the section 4. I'm good.
Okay, before we get to this side of the
Yeah.
table, I
Go ahead,
just
Mr.
have a
Walker.
question and want to know, how do we get to, like, I know the district talked to that one group of teachers. How do we get to meet with somebody, and maybe it's a strategy, to say, okay, I got a rant, like this committee did before with the students before I came. A group of administrators, a group of teachers, and say, what was your experience in the district? You know, how do you feel like you've been treated? How you've seen some promotions? Do you think they've been fair? Have you had an opportunity to be promoted, like some others? You know, positions are added to cabinet positions all the time and to district level positions. You know, was it if somebody felt like they should have been afforded the opportunity? And I know that came up the last time because I read in some of the old minutes before when I was coming on that Ms. Green talked about some of that, just appointing people. Sometimes it gives a lack of opportunity for others. Everybody understand what I just said?
Yeah,
so you
I'm
want to
trying to say it, I'm trying to say it diplomatically.
yeah.
Yes, that
Okay.
instead of getting
Favoritism.
qualified.
Yeah. Give everybody,
Nepotism,
everybody
all of
get a
those
chance.
tisms.
Yeah, no ism. And
Not looking at qualifications.
blame the NyQuil, DayQuil, whatever you want to call it.
Well, how
Mr.
do you
Chair-
want to word that?
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I would be concerned
Monitor, oh, I'm sorry, what'd you say, Mr.?
is the fact that it's almost like the exit interviews. When a person is worried about their livelihood, will they truthfully answer those questions? Or would they opt out? You know, because it sometimes can be like putting a target on you. So.
Yes, I understand, but yeah, I hear you. But if we have that relationship built, then you'd feel comfortable with saying, well, you know, last year I felt like it was whatever before. If it's the whichever superintendent, and I'm not just pointing to Dr. Moore, if it's whichever superintendent, well, you know, I felt like that last year, but I think the climate's better this year. You know, a climate discussion, a climate survey, a climate something.
I think it would-
And don't get me wrong, if I'm the superintendent, if I was, I'd have my own cabinet too. I handpick my cabinet, so that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these other positions. Because I have seen it where you come in and the same cabinet is there, and they put the hatchet to a superintendent. So, you know, yes, choose your own cabinet, but then just arbitrary positions, it has to have a look and a feel of fairness.
I think it would have to be a total cultural change in order to get to that place. You know, I see it's as a friend of mine say, in the perfect world, I can see what you're saying, but right now, we are coming out of the dark ages, trying to move into the light. We're coming out of 50-plus years of civil rights violations, trying to do, and we're struggling just to do the minimum. So, you know, we can't.
Okay, yeah, it's just a suggestion. We're on representation by school. I don't know why I was there.
It's a good thought. In the perfect world, it's a good thought.
And I
but-
think it was probably because, too, that was a data piece that I requested, too. And we received it. I saw it. but I didn't have a chance to discuss it.
Mhm.
But we certainly will next time. Ms. Walker, did you have anything? And then on Ms. Pender?
This pretty much covers those concerns.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that I captured what you said. When you talked about a specific plan to follow up after problems are exposed,
Mhm.
are you speaking of a process to consult the Office of Equity and Inclusion when a teacher feels targeted?
Yeah, if
In
they feel it.
addition to human
And
resources?
I think things have gotten better, but I'd like to see something written that, if the Office of Equity and Excesses, and it's probably there, but we didn't specifically see that. And I certainly do have trust, but it's not in black and white. I see the output that Mr. Seymour is doing, so I know he's doing it, but I'd like for everybody else to see that in black and white.
All right.
And so that one is, anybody wishing to modify or vote there?
So we was,
Okay.
We're going to
Continued
five.
plan supervision, I'm sorry, did you say something?
we're going to 5 now, right?
Yes, sir. Section 5, continued plan supervision, and this is not one that we specifically vote on, but I think the relationship needs to open up with from what you were saying the last time, Mr. Brown.
Mhm.
The relationship needs to open up and could be better. We're going to have heated discussions, but we've got to get to a point, and I don't know if I wrote anything down there. Oh, wait a minute, I did. All previous recommendations in this presentation be included in the revised joint plan. Include in the revised joint plan a more detailed structured guide. I'm going to have to come back to that because I can't remember what I was doing when I wrote it. And then I think we need to recommend that the district utilize some outside technical assistant help. I think there is some that, some real experts in diversity and equity and just some kind of something that they can help, and we can banter about that a little later, give that some thought. I mean, and I don't mean to demean anybody here, not saying that they don't, but there are some things like somebody has helped Pinellas go through unitary status. Somebody helped St. Lucie County. Somebody helped, So if there's some thing out there, we can definitely reach towards that if that's possible. I'm sorry. Okay, anybody else? Ms. Patterson, round robin.
One of the things is, I have several. We propose that since meeting the desegregation order is a priority, that the board place the district for progress toward meeting the desegregation order on its agenda monthly as needed. This to ensure that the progress are being frequently discussed with the superintendent and monitored by the board. I think that enhances transparency, that eliminates getting to the point where I didn't know, or getting to the point where they said, but if it's monthly brought forward, like Ms. Patterson was saying earlier, we wouldn't be walking up against a wall. We would have known that there was concerns about this or concerns about that because it's a monthly report. Another thing that was concerning to me, I think that it needs to be incorporated into this, that profoundly, that the Equity Committee is an independent entity, that it needs to have the ability to stand alone. It is controlled by its members and the chair. I think the wording has to be put in there. I think that the district needs to understand that in this document, that the Equity Committee is not the Indian River County branch of the NAACP. That it's a separate entity that is a byproduct of the school district and the NAACP. I think somewhere in there it should be worded that the school district cannot alter the NAACP's ability to oversee what the equity, because we are not going to just arbitrarily take information that is put on this table and make it the gospel. We have to have the ability to go and find out and make sure that the i's are dotted and the t's are crossed. One of the things that is problematic to determine to us who can work and acquire information on behalf of the NAACP. These things need to be structured in here so that we don't get here that this is my basketball, I'm going to play with it the way I want to play with it, and you can't. This is a defendant and a plaintiff in a we're in 2001, 54-year-old, going on 55-year-old civil rights violation. And somewhere we need to say, there's no bully in the room. We're equal partners or we're not at all. And I think it has to be defined in this continued plan supervision that in order for us to move forward, these things have to be addressed, and I think they need to be documented in the Equity Committee's report that these things can be problematic and are problematic.
Okay. We're going to, and you have that reduced to writing you can send to, we can,
I'll
I
get
wrote
it.
some of it. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else had anything on that? Okay, well, and that's not the one that we vote on, but I have seen some data requests come through from the NAACP, and some of that is, a lot of it is what we would need to get to compliance. And I think we're gonna need that, like ELA, 3% and above, graduation rate, this, that, and the other. There's a lot of things. AP, how many students in AP and IB, testing stuff. So we're just scratching the surface. So yes, sir.
And I would be remiss, the NAACP should not have to do public records requests to receive data. The NAACP is a party. They are not a citizen group requesting information. And I'm forwarding, I think as the president, I used protocol to request that the NAACP be afforded the links, the team link. And we were relegated to being the general public. The executive committee of the NAACP is the governing body. I want to reemphasize, the governing body. I'm just the president. But when the governing body of an organization is not allowed to access this and be relegated to a position of the general public, that I think the courts needs to know. I think it needs to be documented that if the board can get links, the school district board, which is, you got the plaintiff and the defendant, then both parties as governing bodies should be afforded the opportunity to access the link. Also, we need to revisit this thing about the quarterly meetings with the NAACP.
Microphone.
I turned it in. A lot of the issues relevant to problems that the Equity Committee is having or the NAACP is having, it wouldn't be hearsay. When Mr. Brown said this or so-and-so said this, we would interface with the board so that you wouldn't be going on hearsay because all people mouths are cut. And, so you have to be aware that don't have somebody telling you what I said. Let me tell you what I said. And like I said earlier, the district should not be able to decide who is on the team with the NAACP Education Committee or who's on the team that's supervising and looking over the work that the Equity Committee is doing. We are a separate entity. We are an equal partner in this litigation. And I think it needs to be documented that we be afforded that same respect and that same due diligence. So I think it has to be in this district, in this document, moving forward, so that it can be entertained by the eyes of the court.
I only agree with you because I'm reading this title. Indian River County Branch of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People and the School Board of Indian River County. So I don't know why it would work any way different. It should be, in my opinion, the board if they're on teams and the NAACP if they're on teams. And you don't get to tell the district who's
Who they
on
can put
district
on.
staff. So then how in the world did the school district tell you who's on your staff? And we don't get to vote on that, but I say we're in 100% agreement there. If you say somebody's a vice president or a treasurer or whatever they are, they're on the executive committee, and that just looking down the middle, both. So I agree with you, Mr. Brown. Section 6, African American Student Achievement and Resources Allocation. I'll start and I'll go quicker because we already lost one person. African American Student Achievement, page 11. Student achievement gains was not provided by school, by race, by grade, and within schools, as the plan requires. Alternative/discipline requested. I requested the number of African American students in the alternative school by referrals by school, number of referrals and where they came from, referrals by schools the last 3 years, and the majority of that information was asterisked because it was said that FERPA prevented it. So how are we supposed to tell if this joint plan says you address discipline by schools and in the district? How can you tell which schools are disciplining students more so than any other school, or where the problem is coming from? And what action is taken to rectify that? So, and it also says ESE students could not tell which schools or where the referrals originated for this discipline. Student arrest data, as I told you earlier, was not provided, available, nor was a written plan to address disparities. The African American Achievement Plan, I feel, did not have enough sufficient data to evaluate the results or effectiveness of the AA plan with measurable results, with the baseline reduced by 10% here, 10% there, or whatever, and then see if you met those baselines year by year. Information did not address the disparate assignment of African American students in assignments to ESE/special programs. So we've always heard that black students are assigned to ESE more so, and it's in all the research and the reports, but we have no information on it. And some might say, well, did you request it? It's in the joint plan. And so I didn't have much on recommendations. I guess I can point to all of those up at the above that for recommendations. And so there's where and not to say we didn't get any data, but the differentiated would help us to be able to, in my opinion, to say we got more, and we're learning how to extract, request more data that would help us to make more informed decisions. Going round robin, Ms. Patterson. Mr. Brown.
Well, pursuant to Florida State Statute 1003-422H, African American history should be integrated into history teachings in grades K through 12 and be recommended every 9 months. Also, bring back the closing achievement gap budget line item and allocate funds for closing the gap to each school. Develop a special program specifically focused on African American students for closing the achievements gap. This should include tutoring programs as well as other measures. And then basically Provide details of those special programs and other district efforts being made specifically for African-American students to close the achievement gap. And just right off the top of my head, where we don't get our children in ninth grade and not having algebra, knowing that they can't get into the STEM programs.
That's what we'd like to get into also, yes.
So, those are some issues that are my recommendations.
Anything further?
Are we turning your notes into recommendations?
Yes, unless you disagree with it.
No, I'm just making sure.
You
Ms.
can
Walker
change it,
said
you can
we gave
modify
her
it,
the
just tell us what you
secretary
want to
job.
change or
No.
modify.
I receive it.
She say, specify.
I'm gonna, I told Miss Davis I'd email her a copy of them. These notes that I'm reading. Oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Oh, no. No, I'm just saying it, what I have here, I'm gonna make sure you have a copy of it.
It's there. So, I'll have to do it later.
Okay. We're good with that section? Anybody have a
And
desired
you'll send
change
me
on
what you
that?
have, right, Mr. Brown?
Hmm?
You'll send also what
Yes,
you
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, were you guys saying something? Mr. Brown, Ms. Walker, I didn't know if you were saying something.
No. that
No,
was-
she was asking me.
Oh,
to make
okay,
sure I gave her my.
no problem. Section 7, African American Student Assignment. On that first bullet, I have in there, provided race by students, by school, by designation of zone, school, and school choice. Also include transportation method, bus, car, walker. Again, then down in the yellow, the percentage of African-American students assigned to individual schools should be consistent with the percentage of African-American students represented in the district within a range of plus or minus 9 percentage points. It's out of balance. We can take a look good at Dodgertown and Gifford Middle. I don't know, that's getting so, those numbers and those ratios are troublesome, and that's the main thing to me. Everything used to be in very good balance, and now because of, I don't know, some say choice or whatever, that balance is just out. And any other comment there? This is the student assignments.
Again,
Also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just think we spoke about it earlier, with a previous meeting, with school choice. We want to give parents voice
Yes.
and choice.
Mhm.
I don't know if that is impacting, but we need to, if we are going to address it, then we need to find a way to monitor that.
Yeah,
Um,
and I think
I
that
mean,
book,
because it's, we talked about availability and, if parents know about, school choice and if they're
Mhm.
being informed, and there are a lot of abstract things that we don't really quite know how to
Mhm.
really kind of put our finger on to monitor that. So that was just so broad.
yes,
But if we're going to speak of it, I think we, as a committee, need to find a way to really
Yes.
closely monitor, if that's a survey, if whatever measures, but we can't say that it's a racially identifiable school if we don't know
why parents are choosing that. Is it transportation? Is it, maybe it's a high crime area, so people, don't want to have their kids go there. I don't know, but we don't know that until we formulate a way to measure that. And that's probably maybe a survey or something to that effect. When they choose that school, why did you choose that school?
Or something, I know that, I don't know if transportation has it anymore. They had a big map, that they had the dots where all the students were. So did the population shrink that significant in that area that people are not being able in that neighborhood to walk to schools or whatever? And there used to be a time where there was I forget what they call it, a rezoning or master plan or something. I haven't heard about it in years. I did see an email asking for the draft, and somebody said, and it wasn't available or something. And from what I've been told with public records, if anything's in draft and you write it it's on your desk and it's available, it's a public record. So I think that that would affect what some of these schools. What's the plan for that school? I think for those schools, I think Gifford needs to know. How are we going to improve these schools in this neighborhood? I think, what are some ideas? I don't know if there have been any ideas floated. I don't know if the community has been asked for input. I don't know, and we haven't heard, but certainly that's a portion of this. But I do know. I guess I just like talking to you. I keep pointing to you.
I'm wondering why.
Because you're right here.
Has been directed.
He has a moment.
over
No,
here.
I tell you, and I
It's
have
the NyQuil. We'll
it's
go
the
back to.
NyQuil. I have this headache. I
And he
really do.
has some Starbucks.
And Starbucks, oh my.
And I feel like stealing her water again. I stole two people's water the last time. But I know I did ask before about what is the plan for this. And I don't want to look down the road in 3 years and the once thriving schools in the Gifford area are closed or are under, I wouldn't say, underutilized and under. I went through there. I took some pictures. I drove through. There were some potholes, just unkempt. So, is there a plan? Is that a part of this reason? And so I definitely know I asked about it before. So that would be the biggest thing regarding this. I think there has been some progress with magnet schools. Magnet schools used to hover around 4%, and I think it's they were the sacred cows. But I think the district has made some progress in those and for equality with some of the schools. So.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
one of the things, you mentioned it, and I was in a conversation the last couple of days trying to educate some people, at least about Gifford Middle. And where do we go from here? And I say misinformation, disinformation in a community such as Gifford is a bad thing. Because this thing about closing down Gifford Middle and turning it into a black school, the conversation erupted in reference to Gifford Middle being a dolphin in orange and blue. It went from a Gifford High School tiger, maroon and white. That was the initial conversation to retrieve that pride, not to change the school, not to close the school, but it's permeating in the Gifford community. And I was talking to some of the leadership in the Civic League, hey man, because they thought I had something to do with it. The NAACP, no matter how well intended, cannot and will not support any form of segregation. So we need to stop this stuff, because I see in my notes, Gifford Middle has a 600 student population somewhere, and Storm Grove is busting at the seams. And it reminds me of what happened at Dodgertown Elementary, when teachers was telling people, you don't want your children here, this the ghetto, this the hood. So I remember that we used to sit in Gifford, across from Gifford Middle Middle School, and watch the Maseratis, the Lexus, the Mercedes, where the people was rolling in there blocking the street to pick their children up. I spoke at Gifford Middle, and they had some of the top programs in the district. And I know at that time, Mrs. Decker was the principal, Mrs. Jones was the assistant principal, and they were booming. So I don't want us to get sidetracked, and like you say, closing the schools down in our community. I was there as president of the NAACP when they attempted to close Dodgertown down. And we had to stand up and fight. So we have to be cognizant of the little games. Why? I mean, I like schools of choice, but where do we establish the balance? Somewhere we got to establish balance so that we don't have 1,000+ school and a 600+ school. When we had a survey, a zoning survey recently, I think it was championed by Mrs. Barenborg, that nobody has been able to see. The NAACP was adamant about, let us see it, but we were never afforded to see it. So somewhere we need to get stuff relevant so that we can make informed decisions, not only as the NAACP, but as this equity committee. Wait a minute, what's going on? What did the survey say? This is data. This is important data that you can make informed decisions about.
I would like to see it too. I was here when the alternative school was being considered. And I think whoever the superintendent was said he wanted to do something. And the president at the time, Victor Hart Sr., said, you can't make any decisions on any facilities without the input of the NAACP, because it was in the DSEG order. And I think that should still, it affects the population. It affects the population there. And how is there a plan that these parties haven't seen for doing something with the school or rezoning or anything like that? I agree. And we're going to get these notes, and then I'll get them together and get them over to Ms. Davis. You know, I almost feel like we're taking a long time. But I think I was here till 11 o'clock one night talking about masks.
You were. I was watching it.
That problem was less than 2 years old. This is a 50-year-old problem. So in that perspective, I don't feel as bad, because we'll be out of here in a few minutes. So that was section 7. And I think, you know, contrary to what people say and believe, you and this committee and all of us did support everything the district did with those masks. I think everything went in the right direction. It was an excellent job keeping people safe. We had some deaths, and that's, you know, but we support the district. We're not anti-district, but we know how long this has been, and we've seen the things that can happen that can go wrong and to put us back in the same spot. So we have to take a diligent, careful look and make sure that these processes are in place. And we've just scratched the surface, because we got these other sections. This one is section 8. So at the last section, is there a desire to change anything? Last section, it didn't hit compliance. But definitely that was.
Due to the fact that I made the motion to, you're talking about transportation now, right?
No, sir, I was saying the last one we're good with, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so we're at section 8, transportation. You made a motion to do what?
To just table it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would like to rescind that motion, and let's take an in-depth look at it.
Anybody got a second? I think I can second. Oh, or you can.
No, I'm just trying to understand.
We didn't vote on the
We
transportation.
didn't vote on transportation.
But I thought that in last week's meeting, we decided to table both section 7 and 8, that there would not be any because data wasn't reviewed or seen, I mean, there was a long discussion on it. I didn't think that we would, so, I mean,
Yeah, well, there
It's
was,
been a
there was
long
discussion
day.
on both sides, yes,
Right.
you are correct.
You are correct.
And I thought we were going to move it into the next session. And then we were reminded that there was some data that, and so we went back and took a look.
and this is, it's difficult because we don't have the minutes to verify, but, I mean, I'm dependent on, I just thought that we said that we would table those. That's what I recall, so I don't know. And that they weren't, because we didn't have, and I think that's why we requested the information to be seen or presented again with the date as proof to whether it was given to us or submitted to us. I think there was a question of it being submitted in September or something of that effect,
No, that was,
the transportation part, the
that was the next one.
extracurricular.
Yeah, and I believe that,
We voted on
yeah,
extracurricular.
the superintendent said there was transportation. I went back and looked and saw a couple of articles on transportation. I saw there was a graph, a chart of this percentage of African American, this percentage of white by schools. I saw that there was the badge thing, I forget what it's called, that's for security, that each student will get a badge and be able to, for safety. So I don't know if anybody else went back and took a look at that. Okay,
Yeah.
Mr.
All right.
Brown, you did?
After we had the superintendent and all saying that the information was there and about the depots and
Yes.
I asked the question, was the depots, what about these parents who didn't have transportation to schools of choice? And it was brought up by the depots. And then we were forward, said, yeah, you did have the information and all of that. So we went back and looked. And then when you start looking at it, it was information, but it wasn't information. And I even made hard copies of it. You know, I was adamant that I would have it so I could look it in the face and realizing that it was nothing there too, because the depots didn't have data to say who decided, what parents were involved, where the surveys, are these depots relevant to the needs of the people? How do they affect extracurricular activities? And then we didn't even delve into the Key Club and all these smaller organizations. How do these depots help the African-American students who want to be involved of them? Are they readily available? When I started looking at the information that we were given, I said, whoa, Nelly. I mean, nothing for nothing leaves nothing. You have a lot of documentation, but there's not any data that says any of this is working. It's that we done it, but where's the data to say that it's working? Where's the data that says there was input as to how it was going to be done? Where's the parents saying that this is where I need this depot over here? Where is that the African-American students will be accessible to it in order to do extracurricular?
So do those things need to be recommendations that are made?
I think they do.
I mean, if it's not there, then we need to recommend it so that make measurable recommendations so that we can monitor.
I think
right?
they do, and on page 14, I have some recommendations.
That was a great segue, right?
Yes, thank you. I live in South County. If I wanted my child to go up to be transported up to Gifford Middle, is that a possibility? What are the strategic possibilities? And when she gets up to Gifford Middle, if there's an after-school soccer program, orchestra, whatever Gifford has, does transportation affect that? Does this choice of having transportation, so the question is, what's the correlation of the transportation to after-school activities and the possibility to continue in after-school activities with this choice? Because you had two charts, one that showed how many students run, catch the bus, or what percentage is black and white. The other one was the one on choice. So it leaves me, some questions, information on schools, only just the percentages. I would, it leads to more, no data supporting, I think, that update and what the effect is. Are the kids pulling, are there more being pulled, they're zoned more, I guess, away from certain schools or out in the Gifford area? If you keep no documentation showing that parents are choosing to keep kids out of school due to choice, it goes back onto the surveys, and with the after-school activities. Because I know Gifford was split in half, with half the black kids that were being sent to Sebastian. I think they had, 10% and 20%. It's always been at Vero Beach. Vero Beach has always had more. And so, how do those choices work? What are, some more information on that. So, yes, I have to say Dr. Moore was right, that transportation was there. I went back and saw that piece. It was only like 2 pages, so that's why I might have missed it and didn't remember it. And, but it had some stuff that needed to be added in there. And then let me also say again, I also go back to, I started with the easy information. And I mean, with the teachers, and if we had gotten those pieces right away, we could have beat out 3 months with the 2019 recommendations. We could have beat out another 3 months with the teacher hires. And some of I think those delays wasted some time. And I think we can and will do better. We have to do a better job on our side as far as what specifically do we need to see more. And I think the district can do much better with getting the information more timely, and as I showed you tonight, and we talked about before, not to point, something that we can use, and just some of those delays, which I think we've got past, but it caused a lot of angst. And we spent time, I think you said, in the minutia last time or something, with some stuff that we shouldn't have had to have go through. So anyway, with transportation.
What
I
was your
need more
motion?
information.
You need more from, because there
No.
was there a motion on the floor?
No,
Were you gonna-
I would like to see more data
Okay.
complete to transportation to show how it affects the African-American students besides, like I said, to after-school programs. I can get there for school and go home, but I can't participate in this school. You understand what I'm saying? Does that affect anybody? Is that a valid question? I know it has been, even for when you got the homeless population, they're entitled to go to this program, but I think they have to bring themselves or something like that. So there are some of those questions that, we might need to ask, and some might even come up. Are parents going there for gifted? Is there gifted or whatever programmatic choices that cause parents to deal differently with transportation?
But as Ms. Patterson stated, we did have a motion on the floor. It was awaiting a second.
He seconded it.
And that motion was
It was
to,
second?
Yeah, I don't remember what the motion was. That
Oh,
was
yeah.
that was,
The
I
motion
needed
was to
be
rescind.
I don't,
Yeah, I made a motion.
we were
to
both
Yeah.
taking medicine. She had a headache, I think, too.
did you see me taking it?
I did.
To rescind my motion to just table, to just table it is not to establish compliance or non-compliance. And having been in court, how is the judge coming from us going to perceive we table it? Because we are facing a report. And if, we just table it, and then we now have the information that the district said they gave us, and we went back and looked at it, but it was not relevant to compliance from my perspective. But that's why I wanted to revisit it, because I was going to leave it alone, but they was adamant. We gave you the data, we gave it to you,
I
we
went
gave
back.
it to you, and they gave us instances, and there it was. It's there, but it's not definitive, because I can go back to when I coached them 10 years at Sebastian River High School. we coaches had to take kids to Fellsmere sometime. There were kids who came from Gifford, who got waivers, that they didn't have transportations. They would catch rides to school, and then coaches would have to take them home from football practice. So these things are still out there, and once we start seeing that they had not been addressed with data or any pertinent information for us to make a decision, it came back as no compliance, because you told us that you gave us the data. But when I went through it, I think I got the copy right here, in one of these, that the data was not there, right here. Where I pulled the document down and went through it, page by page. And so, that's why I said, oops, you know.
I went back and looked for it and found information on transportation, and I looked through that link that was provided with that huge 30 meg document. So,
And I think in that, transportation was mentioned, what, one time?
it was, like I said, it had that chart of choice school transportation, chart of regular school transportation. It had I know it's not called the We Promise badge, whatever that new badge is that we're going, Z-Pass.
It was
Yeah.
something. It was a big picture, and, you know, and it was used to, you could use it as a library card, or,
Yes,
you know, different stuff you could use
but
it
it didn't
for.
have, enough that I think that we can move forward and say we've got, I think we need to see the full plan with transportation here. Well, and that's just, so your motion, you talked a lot, and then
It was to rescind the.
send the tabling.
Yeah, to rescind the motion I made to table the vote on transportation of non-compliance or compliance.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I think that was 3. Okay. All right, so, all in favor of compliance for what we have seen with transportation, say aye. All in favor of non-compliance because you need to see more or whatever reason, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Was that 3? 4? Let me hear those aye. Can I see hands?
Oh, we're going back to
Okay, so it's
kindergarten.
just 3.
You having a moment.
2 people didn't vote either way.
They abstained.
Abstained because you didn't feel like we should vote, or whatever. Go ahead, explain if you want.
And I think you just said it, you feel like you need to see it a bit more.
Yeah, no. I saw the data that was in
Yeah.
for transportation.
So you're saying the
I don't
data
think it was
was enough.
sufficient for compliance.
What was-
I
what was-
went back and looked.
Yeah,
That's how I can tell you those charts were there. And it had the badge thing.
and.
I know
Mr.
I went and looked.
And, Mr. Chairman, it was downloaded the night before the equity committee. It was uploaded, downloaded, whatever they do.
And I think that was the September portion. There was a second, I think there was a graph portion when I
Yep.
looked, and then that was the September. So I did go and double check. I wanted to pull it up here that night, but I went and checked to be sure.
I think the date and time is on it.
Yes, that date and time on the download when it was like 9:30, I think, or whatever, when I got it.
It's
'Cause I
on
was like,
there.
what is it? And it kind of killed my computer at home, but it was enough for me to pull up on my lunch break at work. Section 9, extracurricular. Because I think we said we're going to table this one, but here we are. And I went back and looked at extracurricular too. There was, I can tell you what was in there off the top of my head, just about. Okay. We had there were some flyers by school. I think there was Oslo, there was Vero Beach High School, there was Sebastian, I think. There were some flyers by school. I think they were inviting participants or kids to participate in in their athletic programs. There was a list of activities. There were some schools that had their activities listed. There was the facilities use agreement and the portion of why, that was expanding opportunities for different parks, or for different recreational facilities. There were a few more things. Now, I'll tell you what when I really got into there to look at, there was something that each school had made up. They have their own requirements to participate. And I made a note that that should be across the board. If you're at a middle school, what are the requirements to participate? So ask extracurricular clubs to provide the requirements to participate, or they had their own handbook. But it should have been, I think that needs to be district-led, not down to the specifics, but kind of general in how they, maybe perhaps how they will allow the students to participate or recruit students to participate. I think sometimes when you leave it up to coaches, as we have found, that sometimes it's a little bit too selective and it leaves out certain students. Let's see. Ask extra, so I'll look at the middle of that page on page 15. Extracurricular to provide their requirements to participate. I don't think there were a couple there. Not every school had gotten any. Report of student participation, including racial makeup of students in each club. Of course, you can't put the names, but there was nothing listed as to who was on what teams. We know what some extracurricular courses automatically lack diversity, and sometimes it would be cheerleading comes to mind. Some lacrosse clubs lacrosse teams come to mind. Soccer sometimes, but sometimes, I don't want to stereotype African American kids don't really go into soccer and a whole lot. You get some of your Haitian populations that do, but we didn't see that roster there, and that would be significantly needed to tell how kids how participation goes. And I looked at so much, I don't remember if the coaches were listed for each school. I remember one time we had I had a list personally I kept of the 50, about 70 coaches, and who was coaching basketball and football and all that, for coaching opportunities for different people. So resources and policies for equity for those activities. The pay to play is a big hurdle. And I mean, it's just probably a big thing to tackle, even though I think that it's being addressed. So down at the bottom, let's see, report of students in their extracurricular clubs are providing their requirements to participate. Cheerleading costs astronomical. Establish resources and policies for equity with those activities, and that addresses the pay to play. And then they channel, and I hope that the Office of Equity and Access, the channel for complaints. What does a family or child do if they feel like they are being mistreated to a certain extent? I can understand a student being disrespectful and getting kicked off the team. That's different. But if the student feels like that they weren't allowed the proper access to the team, or people know, they can look at a whole team and then know how the makeup was made. There's talk, there's something out there. So there was definitely some data there in my, when I looked at it. Does it need more? That is it. Heck, athletics almost needs a whole staff by itself, because you're talking about extracurricular, band. What do our bands look like? Usually they're pretty diversified. Band, chorus, the violin group. Usually that have, and in the dramas, they usually do have, they're pretty set. But there are some other areas that I think needs to take a look at, and we need to, it's probably, this section will probably take longer even than any other section. I mean, as far as getting to where you'd like it because of whatever. But any other comments?
Oh, I think you covered a lot of it. Data submitted did not list extracurricular participation by race, ethnicity. Data submitted did not submit requirements.
That's what yeah.
Data submitted was not evidence. Evidence did not show progress for how complaints are submitted, how participation requirements are evidence that barriers do not exist, in essence, pay for play. These are some issues that can be destructive, especially to African-American kids.
Well, you know, I remember when pay to play went into effect. And if I'm correct, it was around the 2008 time. It was when, no, it was the budget year got very bad, and or something like that. Right after. Okay, somewhere around that time. I remember when they were discussing it, and I know who the athletic director was at Tim. It was at Tim. I almost called his name. Was at Vero Beach High School, and they were talking about making the kids pay to play. And we knew that even the concessions, I think they got about $10,000 per Friday night. Concessions made a lot of money. So why would kids have to pay to play in athletics in such a rich county as we are? Plus, at the time, I don't know if we still do it, we paid other schools like Westwood or Central to come to Vero to play, because we could make more money in our stadium than they could. And when we traveled, we had more people in with us than they had in their own stadium, because Vero Beach has a lot of support. And it didn't matter if it was Sebastian High School or Vero Beach High School. We had a lot of support and a lot of money. And then even with the boosters and everything else. So why students would have to pay to play, I think that is something that is needs to be addressed. And there has been work on this, and I think there have been work in all the areas, but it's going to have to be more before I can stamp wearing compliant on stuff and still know that students don't have access for whatever reason. Earlier this year, you were discussing a baseball team, and for whatever reason, that shouldn't be in this day and time. When I think in '81, Vero Beach High School was a football state champion, and I'm saying that to say, a lot of these besides lacrosse, football and basketball have won many wins. I think Coach Billy Livens, God bless the dead, I think he had 300 wins at one time, didn't he? Off the backs of those boys in Gifford. And now they have to pay to play. Comes a time when you got to say it like it is. And I'm sorry, I'm getting too old not to say it like it is. I watched too many boys with their scholarships thrown away, or somebody told one of the athletes, one of the coaches told UCF, don't take that boy, he can't make it, and he did a walk-on. And I think she transferred one of her kids up to Sebastian High School. They had two brothers. Last name started with a W, and he did a walk-on to UCF, and he made it. So the kids have suffered enough over these 50 years, and there's a heavy lifting. Is the district working hard to do it? Yes, they are. Is there a lot to be done? Yes, it is. And I've said it before, I appreciate what, the steps that we're taking, but there's more to be done.
Mr. Chair, you mentioned scholarships, and part of this is with the process of some of these kids may be eligible for scholarships, but due to the fact that whomever's deciding on some of this stuff may be biased, so you need a channel that can show that it's open and unbiased. We got a lot of problems associated with it, and I was privy to, you know, as I said, I coached at Sebastian for 10 years, and some of this stuff is still out there, and it needs to be rectified immediately. People say, what do you want? You know, this take time. You got to be patient. My Lord, just as a reference point, I don't think you're 50 yet, are you, Ms. Patterson?
No, she's not 50.
I'm just saying, I'm going to,
She's 30-something.
I know, but I'm saying to say this situation is 54 years old.
Older than me.
Just think of that. That this DSEG order, this civil rights violations are 54 years and moving, and now we're being told, well, you should give leeway to this. But as you do this, how many African-American kids are being destroyed? I heard Ms. Green the other day say about her nephew, just recently got out of school. I got a niece. Got some sort of diploma, but functionally illiterate. These are the things that are traumatizing a community such as Gifford. And so when a kid can get a scholarship in a program, but he's being, the nuances of bias insinuated in it can alter his life, it's incumbent upon us to hold the district accountable to make sure that these things doesn't continue to happen. And so we have to you know, extracurricular. My nephew was at Sebastian, and he was on the chess team. But his mom would take him back and forth to school. He didn't have chess. What about a black kid right now that's on the chess team or in the drama club? You know, these are the kids that may, because the channels are not there for complaints or the channels are not there for them to get into the system, you may have another chess master who's a kid of color, but the process won't let him in. These are the things that we see.
And I'm a product of this district.
Oh, I am too.
And I'm just saying, so I'm with you. I understand. I see it. I'm in the trenches every single day. I see it. And not just in the classroom. I have my hands in a lot of things in the community and within the district. So I too live the same reality. And I know the traumas. I know the effects of not having an education. As you have family members, as do I. So you're preaching to the choir. We're all here, you know, seeing the same things, exposed to the same things, and wanting the same things. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get there.
Yeah.
And I just want to acknowledge that, you know, just some of the progress that's been made in this area, having had a child participating in sports and extracurriculars over the last several years, I've not seen as much attention to resolving these issues that are, these inequities in this area. I think that Mr. Seymour and his department have done a phenomenal job this year of trying to establish standards and looking for ways to mitigate some of those financial penalties, is what they really are, for students who want to participate in those areas. So I am, while we're not there yet, I am encouraged that that work is really going on behind the scenes, and that for the first time I do, because it's been talked about even for our committee, but there's never really been, it's been acknowledged, but it hasn't really been.
There has never been anything done about it until now.
Correct.
So I
The
can't.
data doesn't support compliance. The data supports
Right.
non-compliance.
We got a little way to go, but I can't speak enough highly about
We've already voted.
about Mr. Seymour. No, we haven't voted on this one.
We didn't vote on this last time?
It was tabled.
It was tabled.
No, it was tabled. I can't speak highly enough about Mr. Seymour. Matter of fact, to talk about Mr. Seymour, some people say, well, you just like him because he's your friend. No, Mr. Seymour he's highly intelligent. He turned Vero Beach High School to an A school
Yes, he did.
on more than one occasion. He's respected in Fort Pierce, and he's respected in Indian River County. And he's done an awesome job with this. And if other people would get on board and follow his lead, then I know that this would come up quickly.
And just as you said, Ms. Walker, I had 3 children. Kind of speaking to my age a little bit. In the district, and I paid pay to play times 3. My daughters were both cheerleaders, very private sessions for tumbling, all of the things that were required, track and field, from 9th grade all the way to 12th grade. They were, able to get scholarships and go on to further their education and things of that nature. So I understand how expensive it is. I have a son right now in middle school. We are getting a taste of it once again. So I do, and I'm glad that you said that. I do want to applaud those efforts because there was no relief for me then, and I would love for parents to experience some sort of relief, and the students, the kids to be able to participate. I can't imagine what it would have been like for my daughters if I wasn't able to have them participate. Like you said, when you can't do those fundraisers and it has to come out of pocket, I'm, fortunate enough to have been able to do that, but some aren't. So I do applaud the efforts.
And we sold apples for band. I was a band nerd. You can tell I wasn't athletic. So I was in band. I played the trumpet, and then the first instrument, it was at Gifford Middle. We were given the instruments, and of course we returned them back. And then, but I can't imagine what it would be like to try to get your daughter into lacrosse these days, or your son. That's expensive, and it is a barrier. And as we come up on this last vote for this section, I cannot tell you how stressful this is, to tell the truth, because you have people taking it personal, and it's not them. The work is being done, but they've been saddled with the work that maybe 20 superintendents ago denied, and then even from 67 to 94. And now here we are this administration has to straighten up what the past administrations have let go. I remember we had a couple of good ones, but they were outnumbered, sort of to speak, And now it's on these good people to do it, and they're doing a good job, but it's a whole lot. It's like trying to build a mountain with a bucket.
Yeah.
There is so much, and we've just barely scratched the surface when we're talking about graduation rate and all these other things. So, it's hard not to take things personal, but it ain't personal. And if it is, it's, we got to fix up what's been wrong with this past, all the people that have been affected. So, if there's no other discussion, do I have a motion to see if there's compliance for extracurricular?
Compliance or non-compliance?
Compliance or non-compliance?
So moved.
Okay. All in favor of compliance for this area?
Who's second?
I second that motion.
Oh.
Brenda.
Thank you. My head's hurting so bad I didn't even hear her, but I had her. Okay, all in favor of compliance for this section 8, say aye. All in favor of non-compliance, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So it's just 3, and the other 2 are non-voting. And I hope that we have explained some of our observations and the data and the difficulty of being able to say that we are compliant in every area. There is work to be done. There is some good work, really good work. But we can't turn it over yet and let it get out of hand. And there's so much more to ask for in every section. I think if you were listening, you heard. So if you have your recommendations written, I can take those now or email any other recommendations to Ms.
Yes. There were recommendations made, I
Davis.
believe, during the summer. I believe it was our June 17th meeting. I can definitely, they're notated in the minutes, so I can definitely snip those and forward those to you to add as
Yeah.
well. I thought those were really, really good
Okay,
recommendations
if
to
you
add
could
as well.
please, and I'll type them up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I made an executive decision. And I think that you should actually synthesize our notes because, you know,
Okay.
as our leader, I think that, you know,
Leader.
it will be best, so I'm gonna pass my notes down to you.
Okay,
And then that way, if you could, I think it'd be best if you were in charge of that.
all right. Sounds good, sounds good. I'll do that. Next step, we have to, guess we have to get with somebody's department, and we have a report due in November. We have the recommendations. We have to, I think there has to be a meeting, if I read correctly, with the NAACP and the board at some point soon. So, do we want to come back in 1 week for recommendations? Today is the 7th, that would be the 14th, or the because the report's due on the 28th, I think. Somebody told me that, I'm not sure. Yes, sir.
We're going to survey the board, reach out to Mr. Brown's regarding the 28th, which is the 26th, I'm sorry, to see if that could be the joint meeting in the evening. If that
Okay.
day works, that would be the actual presentation.
Is that a Thursday?
That is a
Or-
Thursday.
Okay, all right. Excellent, excellent.
November,
So then, at least by the,
27th? The
26th.
26th is a Tuesday.
oh,
28th is a Thursday.
The 28th?
you want a Tuesday?
I actually was correct, Dr. Shafty. The 28th is the day that we're, we do have a board meeting on the 26th.
Okay,
So the 28th, and Mr. Brown can probably provide the best perspective on how this meeting functioned, because he was a part of it. I've never actually been a part of it. This would be the joint meeting where Mr. Brown Mr. Brown and you would provide the report back to the board as well as the executive committee, and then respond to any questions or concerns.
all right. Thank you, thank you.
October.
October 28th, yes. So then, before then, we need to meet and finalize these recommendations, or do we need to be? I'll get in contact with Dr. Shafty, and then she and Ms. Davis can poll you guys. I am out of brain power, if you can call it brain power. Thank you. Have a good night.
I have
It's 8:24. Oh, it's adjourned, yes.
a